Guys, welcome to episode 5 of Samuraii Radio. As you guys know, I do have a playlist for Samuraii Radio, and the name of the channel is Samuraii Radio, but we do have, like I said, the channel. It is called Samuraii Radio. We do have a playlist as well that is episodes of things that are just little topics that I wanted to talk about. Today's topic is going to be the 5 players I am most excited for coming into the NFL this year. One of them is in his second year in the NFL, but the other 4, well, really the first 4 are rookies. And we're going to get right into it. This is like my third time recording it. So, like I said, we're going to get right into this. And the first guy I am most excited about is Jakeem Grant out of Texas Tech. Jakeem Grant was a guy who I really didn't know about before the draft. And he's a guy who has very much surprised me throughout this year. Or not this year, but during training camp. Out of everything I've heard from the Miami Dolphins beat reporters is that Jakeem Grant is a beast. He comes in at 5'7", 168. But I honestly think that this dude is way better than 5'7", 168. It seems like he's 6'4", 270 or something like that, like something crazy. But I've just heard great things about him, and such great things have been coming out from Dolphins camp about Jakeem Grant that I think that the ceiling is just way too high for him. His last year at Texas Tech was his senior year. He played in 13 games, had 90 receptions, 1,268 yards with a 14.1 average per catch. 10 touchdowns, 8 rushing attempts with 68 yards, 8.5 average there with 2 rushing touchdowns. He had 90 plays from scrimmage with a total of 1,336 yards with 13.6 average per play with 12 total touchdowns. Jakeem Grant, like I said, is a guy who's been very, very high on the Dolphins' radar, and out of everything I've been hearing from Dolphins camp and the Dolphins beat writers is that Jakeem Grant is just basically going to be a beast in the NFL. He's one of the players I'm most looking forward to seeing during the preseason for the Dolphins. The preseason starts Friday, which is 3 days away, and I just cannot wait to finally watch the Dolphins play some football. I've been wanting to watch them since the draft. I mean, it's just been crazy for me to be without football, but Jakeem Grant is a guy who I have a very high ceiling for. Out of everything I've been hearing from him, it looks like Jakeem Grant's going to be a beast. So we'll just really have to see what happens with him. But I honestly think, like I said, that Jakeem Grant is going to be a monster. The second guy on my list is Paul Perkins, running back out of UCLA. He was drafted by the New York Giants. And as you guys know, the New York Giants are my second favorite football team. So it's great to see that he's going to stay within my sort of, I guess you could say, family between the Dolphins and the Giants. Dolphins being my first by a mile, and then the New York Giants being my second. He was a 3-year back in UCLA. In his junior year, he played in 13 games, 237 rushing attempts with 1,343 yards with a 5.7 average per carry. He had 14 total touchdowns with 30 receptions, 242 yards, 8.1 yards per catch with 1 receiving touchdown. He had a total of 267 plays from scrimmage with a total of 1,585 yards with a 5.9 average with 15 total touchdowns on the year. Paul Perkins is one of the guys on this list who I feel like is just very, very underrated in terms of what his production value can be for a football team. I wanted him to be drafted by the Dolphins as well as the next guy on this list. 2 guys who I think, like I said, are extremely underrated. But I just have a very, very, very big hope that he turns out to be a really good running back. Out of what I saw from him in tape and just YouTube videos in general, watching how he played at UCLA, you know how they have all the draft type videos, but just watching it was making me look at him like, oh my god, this dude's going to be a beast. I honestly think that he would have been the perfect selection for the Miami Dolphins at running back. Imagine Arian Foster, him, and Jay Ajayi. I think it would have been a perfect mix of a 3-headed monster, but we did get Kenyon Drake. Like I said, Kenyon Drake hasn't really proven too much. I've said that in previous videos. That's why I said like I said, but I just think that Paul Perkins would have been the best pick for the Miami Dolphins at the time. But we really have to see what he can prove for the New York Giants. Like I said, he's one of the players I have the most excitement for during this year. One of the rookies who I think is going to show a lot more than what his draft choice was. So now we're going to go to our third person on the list, and that is Carl Nassib out of Penn State. He was drafted in the 3rd round by the Cleveland Browns, and Carl Nassib was a guy who, yeah, he's number 3 on my list right now, but if you asked me before the draft, like 3 or 4 weeks before the draft, if you asked me who the player I was most excited for and who I wanted the Dolphins to draft the most, it was Carl Nassib. This dude out of Penn State was a walk-on defensive lineman for Penn State. He played in 10 games, and in those 10 games, he had 31 solo tackles, 15 assisted tackles with 46 total. He had 19 and a half tackles for loss, which I think led the NCAA. He also had 15 and a half sacks, which I think also led the NCAA. No, sorry, the tackles for loss was 7th, but he led the NCAA in sacks, and he led the Big Ten in sacks, with 16, and he led with forced fumbles, which was 1st. And this dude was a 2015 Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. He was 2015 Consensus All-American. He won the Ronnie Lott Trophy, the Ted Hendricks Trophy, award, and the Vince Lombardi Award. All of that was last season. He won 5 awards last season. He was 7th, like I said, for tackles for loss, and 2nd in the Big Ten. This dude, I mean, are you kidding me? It's like a beast. Like, he had all these achievements. You know, it was just in 1 year. His previous 2 years were very, very... It was not bad, but they weren't the best. He only had 1 sack in each of those seasons, respectively. But, I mean, you have to, like, look at this and be like, this dude, okay, maybe even if this was for 1 year, you have to take a chance on him. He went in the 3rd round. If I was the Dolphins, I would have tried to bite for that. I think we didn't have a 3rd round pick. I'm not too sure. No, we did have a 3rd round pick. But I would have bid for him in the 2nd round. I would have tried to trade into the 2nd round again, and I would have bid on Carl Nassib. I know it could be a lot of me just saying things, and I could be very wrong about this, but this is one of the dudes who I was looking at, and I was like, this guy is going to be great. His brother plays for the New York Giants. His name is Ryan Nassib. He's the backup QB to Eli Manning. But this dude just looked like a beast, and I was looking at him, I'm like, there's no way in hell that this guy is not going to be great. He was a walk-on, and he led the NCAA in sacks last year. It's just crazy to think about, and he led the Big Ten as well, like I said. I really hope that he turns out to be something great for the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns definitely need some up and ups, and I think this was an excellent choice by the Cleveland Browns to pick Carl Nassib, especially in the 3rd round. I would have thought he went at least mid-2nd. That's what a lot of people were predicting him to go as well. But it's crazy to think that he fell to the 3rd and no one picked him. I honestly thought he was going to fall to the Patriots, which would have made me pissed because, they would have made him amazing. He would have been so amazing for the Patriots. And, oh, God, that would have sucked to see him go against our offensive line twice a year. Twice. But that's the number 3 guy on my list. The number 4 guy on my list is another guy the Dolphins drafted. Yeah, there's 2 guys the Dolphins drafted, and the first 4 are guys that I wanted the Dolphins to draft in the first place, except 2 of them were after the draft. I was like, okay, these are great guys. But the other 2, Carl Nassib and Paul Perkins, were guys I wanted them to draft before. This guy they drafted in the 2nd round, and I'm still questioning, which is Xavier Howard. If you saw Miami Dolphins season prediction / stats predictions video, I have a very high ceiling for Xavier Howard. This dude has had the highest ceiling since he was drafted by the Miami Dolphins to come in and be the starter for the Miami Dolphins, at least the 2nd starter behind Byron Maxwell. He has the highest ceiling, I would think, out of most of the players in the Dolphins locker room, besides, I would guess, Ryan Tannehill and a couple people on the defensive line. But him, and I guess you could say Devante Parker as well, they have the highest ceilings right now to perform. This dude had 42 total tackles last year. 1 was for loss, 0 sacks. He had 5 interceptions, 74 yards total, which is a 14.8 average. He had 10 deflected passes and 1 fumble recovery. I do like him. He's a big press corner, which is what the Dolphins wanted, especially for their defense. It's also why they have Byron Maxwell. But this guy needs to perform. I have a high ceiling for him. You saw it in my stats video. Like I said in the stats video, there were a couple people commenting saying that they were unrealistic. You know, a lot of it was unrealistic. It was way before we had seen anything from training camp, and it was a very optimistic point of view towards the Dolphins season. I was a little bit realistic within records, but the stats were obviously unrealistic by a mile. I will be doing another video along those lines once preseason is over, but like I said, that's the end of the story. Those are very, very foregone by a mile. So Xavier Howard has a very high ceiling. He was drafted from the Dolphins in the second round. He was out of Baylor. When he was drafted, a lot of people were like, whoa, that's pretty crazy. One guy that I've wanted for so long. If you had looked at my old tweets on Twitter, he was one that I was just saying, draft this man. He was drafted in the second round, 23 pick in the second round, 54th overall. His name was Mackenzie Alexander from Clemson. I wanted this guy so bad. You have no clue. I wanted the Dolphins to draft him so bad. And when I saw when he was still available and they said the Miami Dolphins select Xavier Howard out of Baylor, I was like, are you kidding me? We could have picked Mackenzie Alexander. We picked Xavier Howard. That's why I'm saying that if they took him over Mackenzie Alexander, who I think is going to be a beast in the NFL, he has a very high ceiling. That's what I'm going to leave that at. And my final player, who is in his second year, and I'm changing this on the fly right now, is going to be Devante Parker. It was originally to be Tony Lippett, but you know what? I'm going with Devante Parker because, like I said, he has a very high ceiling for the Miami Dolphins this year. As you guys know, Devante Parker last year, he was injured for most of the year. But then when he came back healthy towards the end of the year, this dude was amazing. This dude was a beast. He was showing flashes of what the Miami Dolphins wanted him to be when they drafted him. I love Devante Parker. I think that he could be the number one wide receiver on this roster. I think Jarvis Landry is more of a 2 for us and more of a 2 in the NFL in general. But, I mean, if you could take that and imagine that your best 2 wide receivers are Devante Parker and Jarvis Landry, that is a deadly duo. And with what the Miami Dolphins are doing with Ryan Tannehill so far, at least with Adam Gase, if he can come on and show his strides even more this year, then there is such a high ceiling for Devante Parker that I think he could go beyond that ceiling and be just an amazing wide receiver in the NFL, which also means the Dolphins have to pay him, which they don't like doing a lot to their players. But I think this guy could just be an absolute beast, and I'm really hoping that he does become a beast. That's really all I have to say on that. I do think Devante Parker will be good. Like I said, the list in order was Jakeem Grant, Paul Perkins, Carl Nassib, Xavier Howard, and Devante Parker, the 5 guys I am most excited for this upcoming season. Young guys, 4 of them are rookies. One of them is a sophomore now. Those are 5 guys, like I said, I'm most excited for. Guys, I will be doing one for veteran players, and I will be doing a video also, which should be coming out soon. There's not going to be a video tomorrow. Today is Tuesday. There won't be a video tomorrow, Wednesday, because I am going to a different area, which I will not be able to have my recording equipment with me. But there will be a video back again on Thursday, and that will be, have the Miami Dolphins done enough to bump up the Ryan Tannehill talk? Until then, guys, I will see you next time. Peace.